Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday morning Mortgage Coach call. Every Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock Pacific. We're here every Tuesday to have the best sales meeting in the mortgage industry. Everybody on this call, you are a mortgage pro, and you're among America's best mortgage leaders. Make sure you connect with each other, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. My name's Dave Savage. I'm the founder and CEO of Mortgage Coach, and everything I'm about for the past 15 years has been about helping mortgage professionals deliver better advice to home buyers and borrowers so they can have responsible, sustainable home ownership, make good decisions. And as a mortgage coach, everybody on this call, you've invested or your company's invested so you can educate buyers and agents around making smart liability, smart debt decisions. So while yes, we're a technology company, we've got awesome apps, we've got awesome ways to deliver this information. At the end of the day, if you're not using it and if you're not asking the right questions, if you're not really doing that with home buyers and realtors, you're not getting the most value. So that's what we're here to help you guys do. So again, reminder everybody, we will upload a recording to this to the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. Make sure you have connected with us there and you're getting that information. I've got two just fantastic guests today. I've got David Bach. David, welcome to the call.
Dave, thank you. It's great to be on the call. I really appreciate your invitation.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to learning more about your philosophy. I have several of your books. I've read one of them. I know I got to read them all, but you know you're a celebrity when since I announced this, I had one really good friend of mine and a leader in our community saying, "Hey, I went to high school with that guy and used to ride share," and I had another financial planner reach out who's been a leader on our call saying, "Hey, I know Dave from back when." So I think I think that means you're a celebrity, my friend, and I'm looking forward to learning more about your backstory.
Well, thank you. It's really great to be with you. I love what you're doing because I think the decision when someone goes to buy a home and they make a mortgage decision, it's really one of the most important financial decisions that they make in their lifetime. So I just commend you and everybody who's on the call for this commitment to constantly get better at what they do, because being a mortgage consultant is such an important job and makes such a difference in people's lives. So just really appreciate being here. I've grown up in the investment business. This is something that I've been doing my entire life almost. People go, how did you get started in the investment world and teaching? And I started going to investment classes at the age of 9, and that's really young. And people go, how can a 9-year-old kid end up in an investment class? Well, the answer is that my dad was teaching that investment class. My father was a financial advisor. He worked in the Bay Area where I grew up, and my dad built his brokerage business teaching investment classes. And
wow.
So I would go as a little kid to my dad's classes once a week. And the deal my dad made me was basically, sit in the back, he'd dress me up in a suit and tie, sit in the back of the room, be good, be quiet. I'll take you to Baskin-Robbins after the class is over. And what would happen is that, I actually sit in the back of the room, learned a lot. And by the age of 12, I was starting to teach my friends' parents how to invest and buy municipal bonds. And so that's a little strange, but that's how I grew up. And investing was something that we talked about at the dinner table. And so for me, it wasn't a big deal because it was just a big part of the way we talked at home. Well, and so I came into the business pretty young, in my 20s, in 1993, and I started teaching really right out of the gates in Lafayette, California, an investment class specifically geared towards women. And there's a whole backstory on how that came to be, but that's kind of the beginning of my story. I started teaching classes for women and money, and from there it really took off.
Well, Dave, I am really looking forward to hearing more about that and actually helping all mortgage professionals connect better with women. Let's face it, in the mortgage decision, either the woman is making the decision or she is significantly influencing the decision. So I'm gonna do a little bit of housekeeping, couple announcements from last week, and then I will formally bring you in and share your desktop in less than 5 minutes.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right, right. Well, it's also good to have Phil Black, former Navy SEAL trainer, entrepreneur, was on the Shark Tank. Phil recently had a transaction where he sold FitDeck, and Phil's become a good friend. And by the way, everybody, Phil Black is also going to be a featured speaker at Sales Mastery this year. So, Phil, it's good to have you on today's call, too.
Thanks, Dave. I am really fired up. Thanks for having me on.
I still think it's a hallmark mortgage coach call. That first one that you and I did last year after we met each other at that Nike Accelerator program, you just really talked about what it takes to be a Navy SEAL and how that applies to being a mortgage professional. I have that call saved as one of the best ever. So looking forward to you wanting up that last call.
I hope so. That's a good bar to go after.
All right. Well, and again, two really interesting calls. We're going to be talking about how to serve women better, and then Phil's going to just talk about how to prospect, how to get over call reluctancy, and bringing that Navy SEAL attitude to going out there and I guess talking to more women. So a couple reminders from last week. We had John Weller, one of the nation's best loan officers. I mean, not only is he one of the most successful, but when you look at the advice that he delivers to his customers and the experience that he drives, we're not talking about a 1%er. We're talking about one of the 100 best loan officers in America. So big takeaway from last week that I just keep thinking about was just how intentional John has been around, his genius grid and being very intentional about living where he delivers the most value in his genius zone and building a team around the areas where he's either not so good or he's even incompetent. So good reminder for Mortgage Coach members. I think it was a pretty big takeaway for me, and hopefully it was a takeaway from you, is he is a master of Mortgage Coach. There's things that his team does, but when it comes to asking good questions and then providing deliverables to his clients around advice, that is something he takes very seriously. And then when it comes to the application, the transaction, and the manufacturer part of a loan, he's got a great team to make sure that he delivers on those promises. So just, all you mortgage coaches on this call, if you didn't watch that call, make sure you did, and really make sure you're living in your genius zone and you're delivering amazing experiences for everybody. I wanted to do another shout out, good friend of Mortgage Coach, Ryan Hills, who's a video leader in our industry. And this guy's got videos that have been watched hundreds of thousands of times, and he's got a regular weekly show for realtors. And he invited me to create a video for him last week. We actually recorded it last Friday. It was posted on Monday this week. And it really it was a great case for why and how mortgage professionals should be using video, how they should be bringing leadership to realtors. I shared what I thought was my big takeaway. And my big takeaway was that only 15% of realtors are using video. 85% know that they should be. And hey, everybody on this call, you're a mortgage coach. You have great tools to create great videos that deliver great service for home buyers. So if you didn't watch this video, make sure you do. It's on our Facebook page. Plus, we're promoting it in a few other channels. But, this is what realtors are saying. I'm impressed with the way you use video. Do it more. I love your video report. It's so great. And again, these are not just one-off comments. We get these from realtors all the time that want to work with mortgage professionals that are delivering advice and creating mortgage experiences. So all you Mortgage Coach members, hopefully we're moving the ball here. So Dave, I think you shared your backstory a little bit. So I think we've got a pretty good idea of how you got into financial planning. But I mean, you've had over 7 million people read your books or purchase your books. You've been on Oprah. I mean, you've become a celebrity around financial advice. Obviously, I want to make sure we center this call around how to serve women. But I also am kind of curious, how did you go from being, this 9-year-old financial, and take no insult by this, nerd, to being this national celebrity around finance and money?
Well, thank you. I think I always tell people, at least for me, but I think this is true across the board with entrepreneurs, it always starts with a specific passion. And what I found young is I love to teach people how to be smarter with their money. And I found at a young age that I could take what was complicated and make it simple. And again, a lot of this was how I was impacted by the women around me that I got to teaching about women and money. I was raised with a grandmother who was very involved with managing money, and she made a decision at 30 that really changed the destiny of my family, because my grandmother at 30 was poor. and she was living paycheck to paycheck. And at 30, she decided she wanted to be rich. That she didn't want to be somebody who lived paycheck to paycheck. And so she went out and self-taught. First, she took classes. She found money mentors, and she learned how to become wealthy over her lifetime. And by the time she passed away, she was a millionaire. And she passed that legacy of learning on to my father, who then passed it on to myself and my sister. And I tell that story because so often women can completely change the destiny of a family when it comes to their finances. And my grandmother did just that. And what happened is when I came into the investment business, in the early 90s, I sat in on a bunch of investment meetings with my father where we had unfortunately, in a very short period of time, like a 30-day period of time, we had multiple clients pass away. And in all the cases, it was men that passed away. And so I was sitting at this table with my dad and these clients of ours that were widows, and I was watching my father, while these women were really shaken up, I was watching my father have to teach them how to write checks and how to read their brokerage statements. And I remember at the end of a couple of these meetings, I turned to my father and I said, Dad, what is going on here? I mean, how is it possible that these ladies don't know you're teaching them how to read their brokerage statements at the worst possible time in their life? And he said, well, not everybody's like your grandmother. He's like, we've got a lot of traditional families where the men have managed the money or they've hired me, but the women haven't been that involved. And this is the early 90s. I said, well, that's crazy. We have to change this. So my initial goal was to teach investment classes for my women clients. And that's what I did. I created a class for our women clients. And candidly, nobody thought it was going to work. I was working at a very large financial service company. I went to management because I had to get compliance approval to teach the class. And they said, it's a bad idea. Don't bother. Women won't come to your seminars. They're not interested. And I was too young and stupid to know that they were wrong or that I was wrong. And I just said, well, I'm going to try it. And we did an invitation just to our women clients. And we had 225 women want to come to the first seminar. And literally at that first seminar, I had all these clients saying, well, this was amazing. When are you going to teach another one? Because I want to bring my daughter, I want to bring my grandmother, I want to bring my friend. And I just kept teaching. And then what happened was my mission changed, and my mission became a big mission, which was I wanted to teach 1 million women to be smart about money so that I could basically create more Grandma Bachs. I could help women, protect their family financially. And it's usually women that teach the kids about money at home. So I had this goal, 1 million women, and then I just worked backwards. How would I touch 1 million women around the country? And so I took a seminar that I created and I turned it into a book, which was Smart Women Finish Rich. And that first book became a PBS special. And from there, I just literally did back of the envelope math. I'm like, if I'm going to reach 1 million women, how long do I want to do it in? My goal was 10 years. We ended up pulling it off in less than 7. And we went out and we trained other financial advisors to teach my seminars all over the country so we could just simply go out and reach more people. And that's how it all started. And then it just took off from there. It exploded from there.
I love it. I love it. Well, a couple things, and I am going to, by the way, share the desktop. I know you have some slides that you may want to share.
Sure.
So I have pushed that out to you. So one thing I want to make sure everybody connected on, and by the way, I'll let you know as soon as I can see your desktop. One thing I want to make sure everybody connected, and I don't know if everybody heard David say this, but he talked about, education made simple. I'm sure why he was so successful is that when he was educating people, he was taking complex concepts and making them simple. And just hearing you, during this conversation, it's clear that you have that as a gift. And as someone who's read your books, it's really clear that that's a gift. And so, you're talking to a group of mortgage professionals. Now, they all have a couple things in common. They do believe in being educators, or they would not invest in Mortgage Coach, and they wouldn't take time to be on this call. So everybody is investing in education. Everybody is helping families make, financial decisions, the mortgage decision around getting into debt. So I guess where I'd like to take it, but again, Dave, feel free to, take it a different direction if you want to, is what is different about women, and from a mortgage professional standpoint, how can we take what's different and be better leaders and counselors during the mortgage decision?
Yeah, well, you bet. And by the way, can you guys see my screen yet, or is it not showing?
I can see it.
Okay, great. So let me just start, I guess, in some ways self-serving for everybody on this call. When I go out and I train financial advisors, and I don't know why this would be any different for mortgage advisors. When I train financial advisors, I say something to them very simple, and it's this. And it's going to sound counterintuitive or maybe even a little sexist, but it is this. It is women make better clients than men. And when I do seminars and I've got hundreds or thousands of people in a room, and I say women make better clients than men, let me tell you why that's true. And this comes from my personal experience, but this also shows in the data. Women make better clients than men because, number one, women refer an average of 3 times more than men do. Now, when you're in a room of people and you go, why would that be? Why do women refer 3 times more than men do? It's really simple. The first reason that women refer 3 times more than men is that women have this really special thing that is unique to them and different than men, and it's called friends. Now, see, you're listening because you're a guy. There's no audience to laugh back, but the reason this is so funny is that the fact is when you get to be over the age of 40, men tend to have fewer friends, and by 50, if you're an average guy and you've got 5 friends that you're close to, that's a lot. Women can talk to 5 to 10 friends in an hour. And so what happens with women is if they like you and they're working with you and you're doing a good job by them and they believe that you're their advocator and they trust you, they tell their friends about you. So when I was at Morgan Stanley and I had built my business doing financial seminars for women and I had spent all my time doing education, I had such a strong bond that our office was overrun with referrals. And so women tend to really like to be advocates of the people that they work with that they trust. Now, compare that to men when it comes to finances. What we find is a lot of times men actually don't like to share as much. When they find a good expert, they like to take credit for the decision. So if they find a good mortgage, they brag about the mortgage that they've chosen themselves. They don't brag about the mortgage advisor that they've necessarily found. So I've just found over time that, your life from a business perspective is you get more referrals from women than men. Now, in most cases, especially with mortgages, often you're working with a couple, and it's the same thing as a financial advisor. What we found is that if the relationship is solely with the husband, that relationship long-term won't be repeatable. So like in the mortgage business, you're doing mortgages, hopefully every 3, 4, 5 years whenever there's a need. In the advisory business, you're working with his clients year after year after year. If the relationship is solely with the husband, that relationship is not going to be a long-term relationship. And there are a lot of reasons for that. In fact, I'll go through some of my slides here and show you. As I was telling you, the first book is Smart Women Finish Rich. And in this book, there's a bunch of data about good news and bad news. And let me just kind of run you into some of the good news, because this sort of goes to the heart of why I believe it's so important to really be reaching out to women from a financial education standpoint. The demographics right now, Dave, in this country are such that women are, and this has been happening over the last 20 years, but women are really becoming the controllers of wealth in this country. At the next slide, I'll get to the end here. The final slide will tell you that, women. It's been said that women control about 80 to 85% of all purchasing decisions. What I always joke is that reality is that they may control 80-85% of purchasing decisions. If you're married, they control more like 90 to 95 to 100% of all purchasing decisions. So what we've seen is that women are not just the advocates often in a financial relationship, but they're the decision makers. And this is happening because of the economic cloud of women. So when you look at the good news right now in this country, for women, financially, women are the entrepreneurs of America. Today, they own over 10 million businesses. They control 46% of the household wealth, which is greater than $675,000. These 10 million businesses, they earn over $1.4 trillion a year. And what's interesting is that year after year, what we see from an investment perspective is that women actually make better investors than men. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, but the primary reason, and this is good for men to hear, is that probably the number one reason that the data shows that women are doing better financially, and by the way, they're doing better by about 2% a year annually, which is significant. The reason that their investment performance is better is they trade less. So when women make investment decisions, they tend to do research, they are much more long-term, and they trade less, and that leads to better performance. Continuing on about how wealth is being built, one of the reasons why women are earning more than ever is because they're graduating from school more now than men. So you've got 50% of, these are recent statistics, but 50% of bachelor degrees are women, 59% of master's degrees now are women, and 52% of doctorate degrees are women. So these statistics have really ratcheted up over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And what this is leading to is that when you're out there working with families today, about 1 in every 2 families right now in America are the sole breadwinner, or the leading breadwinner now is the woman in the household. And that's really changing the landscape of how investment decisions and purchasing decisions are made. And so again, when I go back to the mortgage business that you guys are all in, it's just incredibly important, I believe, that you, one, focus on the education process for your women clients, but 2, if you are working with a couple, and if by some chance it's the husband that reached out to you to do the mortgage, it is incredibly important that you involve his wife in the process of both the education and the decision. Because over time, if something happens to that husband, she's not going to know what's going on with the mortgage unless you've educated her. And more importantly, as time goes on, she will more than likely be involved in deciding whether or not that home is refinanced, or the next home that is purchased, or who they use for the next mortgage. And if you've not worked with the wife, I think you'll lose the business. So a lot of this is, in your own case, it's really about growing your business, but it's also about protecting your business. Continuing on good news. Are you there, Dave?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I did want to call. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, I did want to call this out because it is interesting. I'm going to try to get a poll put up. I would like to know, who are you presenting more often to, the men, the women, or both at the same time? But something for all you mortgage coaches to take into consideration. Let's say you're communicating with the husband, and he's the one that is, from your perspective, making the decision. When you create your edge video, always make sure you're connecting with the men, the women, and calling out, other people involved in the mortgage decision. Dave, I know you've got some more to share on this, but I also would like any guidance you would have for everybody on how to be more proactive when the woman is not involved in the conversation. She's either going to influence or make the decision. Some tips and strategies to bring her into the conversation, if you have some. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great place to start. I appreciate you jumping in and asking the question, because going back to being a financial advisor, but it relates to being a mortgage advisor. I used to joke that if a wife came into my office and said, "I don't need my husband here for the meeting," we'd take the meeting. But if the husband said, "I don't need my wife here for the meeting," we wouldn't take the meeting. So I think it's really, if by some chance you're working with, because the difference with a mortgage often is that you're talking to one person, you're going over the rate, maybe you talk to the couple at the start, but now you're going back to one person to make the final decision. What rate do you want to lock in? What mortgage do you want? Let's say it is the husband. He's calling you from work, and he's like, "You know what? I want to go with the 5-year ARM. I've looked at your numbers, and I'm going to go with the 5-year ARM. I'm going to pick this rate, whatever it is they decide." How do you, it's very easy to go, "Okay, well, great, we're done. Let's get the application going. Let's close this business." I think what you need to do is you want to swing back and say, "You know what? That's great. Let's go forward. But let's also set up a time where I can either go over this presentation with your wife, or go over this presentation with the two of you." Because I know that if anything happens to you, number one, you're going to want your wife to know about this. And that alone is almost enough to say, I don't ever want you to be in a situation where something happens to you, your wife doesn't understand the most important asset that she owns, which is her mortgage. Because God forbid something happens to you, A, she may not understand the mortgage, or B, somebody else may come along who's not me and not take care of her the way I'm taking care of you. Anybody who loves their wife is going to go, "Absolutely, let's do that." And so a lot of this is just about protecting the family. Like, This is a major financial decision. The two of you need to know what's going on. The other thing that makes you guys unique in this business is you have to understand most people are, you know this, most people are not out there doing real education on the way you are in the mortgage space. So it's a sales transaction versus a consultative approach, and you guys are taking a consultative approach. And so because you guys are such, I call you consumer advocates the way you're doing your business, that's positioning you as a consultant where you're like, why would anybody be against you making sure that you're connecting with both people that are married? So I think that part of it's actually very easy. Does that help?
Well, well, not only does it help, and I hope everybody connected the dots, the way we're getting leadership from David here is not only very practical and gave us some tactical feedback, but you're demonstrating that you care. So by just the very nature of you having this conversation with the husband, you're not telling him you care. You're not telling him that I'm a referral by only loan officer. These aren't words. This is demonstration of you care about the family. You care about everybody making a better decision. And at the end of the day, you know, you said it very eloquently, David, but, you know, not only is this a great way to do business, this is a great way to be more successful. So I mean, I really like where this is going now. Now, David, you know, I interviewed Rick Edelman a few weeks ago, and he did a session where it was all about, you know, the big long mortgage. I know you have partnered, given that you know, we are very much consumer advocates to help home buyers make better decisions. You know, we very much believe in transparency, helping people make an informed decision. You know, one of the things that's very different about a mortgage coach's experience is that we're showing different loan options, what the cost is over time. And we're giving loan officers the ability to create a video so that not only is there graphs and charts, but there's a video so that the husband, the wife, everybody involved in the decision makes a better decision. So given that you guys are going to be part of this mortgage coach conversation and helping us deliver better education, tell me a little bit about what this new partnership means. This is, you know, this is big news in the financial service leadership industry.
Well, you know, it is real. It's really exciting, and Rick, obviously, I've probably talked a little bit about this. So Rick and I have just partnered. I've become the vice chairman of Edelman Financial Services, and for those who don't know, Edelman Financial Services is one of the largest registered investment advisors in the country, and what that means is they do financial planning for a lot of people, really reaching those who need the help, including anybody who's on this call. If you need help, you should reach out to them. They do unbiased fee-based financial planning, and they're working with 24,000 families right now, and managing about $13 billion. And I partnered with Rick because I decided after having taken a year-long sabbatical that the last 10 years I've dedicated to financial education. It's what I've been doing in New York City. I've written 12 books over the last 10 years. I decided what I wanted to do was have a home for people to go who needed rock-solid, honest financial advice that they could trust. And I believe that the average American deserves that. So that's how I ended up partnering with Rick. And I mean, we just literally announced this partnership like less than, I think, 3 weeks ago. So you're my first, in fact, live presentation, if you will, in the marketplace. So it's Dave, it's exciting to be with you. You're my first presentation. And this was an unusual one for me because what's happening is that Edelman Financial Services is working on a program now for the mortgage industry. And they're going to be rolling out a seminar specifically for the mortgage industry, talking about the right ways to look at buying a home and mortgages. And they're basically going to be creating a tool for you guys in the mortgage business to use to grow your business. So I was told that the person you should reach out to, and there's going to be more details coming from this, but that there's a whole turnkey seminar program being created specifically for you in the mortgage business. It is a consumer education piece. It is extremely powerful. It's based on Rick's principles. And the person that you guys are to reach out to is our Vice President of Business Development. His name is Mark Brogley. And if you can see my screen share right there, there's the phone number. It's 703-246-6776. And there's his email right there, markbrogley@rickedelman.com. If you give Mark either a call or an email and tell him that you were on this call today with Dave, with me, and you'd like more information about the mortgage seminar that Edelman Financial Services is putting together, they can get back to you and send you details. And this is a program that you'll be able to use, and there's going to be no cost for you to use it.
Well, again, I am looking forward to having you back in. I mean, anybody that is providing great education from a great place is welcome in the Mortgage Coach community. I mean, we believe in helping home buyers make better decisions. You know, another thing that we're pretty passionate about is helping young people make better debt decisions. You know, so Mortgage Coach professionals, they're very much bringing families, you know, transparency, total cost over time, and out there in the industry providing that. So, you know, I would love for you to stay on this call as long as you'd like to. At the same time, if you feel that you do need to jump, I would understand that. We're going to bring in Phil Black, Navy SEAL, and he's going to talk about prospecting. And since we talked about how to connect and deliver more value to women, I mean, let's put it on how to call more women and how to bring them into the conversation. By the way, David, are you going to be able to stay on, or are you going to have to jump off?
Yeah, no, I'm going to stay on because you teed up Phil so well that I want to listen. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good. So, Phil, I have made an effort to pass you the mic and pass the screen. Again, you have been in our community for a long time. For those of you that don't remember Phil Black's backstory, he was a Navy SEAL who served our country. He's a graduate of Harvard, graduate of Yale. He's got, I mean, and Phil, I'll let you do more on it, but, you know, just an incredibly successful man with a great heart to serve. So, you know, Phil, my ask to you was mortgage coaches, they all have great tools to deliver great advice. And when I am talking to folks that are on a mortgage coach team and, you know, what are your challenges, usually it comes up that they're not on the phone enough. They're not talking to enough people. They're not connecting with enough people. Some people call that prospecting. Some people call the biggest enemy to prospecting, call reluctancy. Call it what you have. Phil, you know, what do you have to say from your perspective, and how can you bring some leadership to us?
Great, thank you for that intro, Dave. Can everybody see my screen with that nice 60-foot cargo net with those guys climbing up?
Absolutely, man.
Okay,
and by the way, Phil, before you get into it, do a little bit on your backstory, just so everybody has a better connection.
Yeah, I'm going to work through some of that background in the story. So maybe I'll work it into the actual presentation if that's okay.
It's okay with me.
Okay.
Roll.
Great. Well, there's a very basic concept that I believe is often taken for granted in today's world of instant gratification, and that concept is called preparation. It's not a sexy term. It's not a term that you'll find trending on Twitter or Facebook typically, but I will say without hesitation that preparation is the discipline that has been the most responsible for any success that I've had in my life. And part of this is because I'm not the most gifted and talented guy in the world. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the best athlete, the most well-connected guy. And I have to put in significant time and effort whenever I want to move the needle. So I'd like to break down this concept of preparation into 3 steps. Step number 1, why? Why prepare so hard? What's the point? Why work so hard on this presentation or for a meeting or for a mission that you're going on? Step number 2 is how do we prepare? What goes into becoming a world-class or legendary preparer? And step number 3, results. How does preparation affect our performance, and does it actually work? So I'm going to work through these steps in the context of my journey from a Wall Street investment banker to a Navy SEAL, and then discuss how you might take some of these concepts and apply them to your work as a loan officer and a leader in the mortgage industry. So again, step number 1, why? Why prepare so hard? I played basketball in college. As Dave said, I went to Yale on the East Coast, and one of our tournaments happened to be held in sunny San Diego, and it just so happened that one of my teammates had a good friend who was a Navy SEAL and living in San Diego where the SEALs are based. And we got to visit him during one of our days off during the tournament, and at the time I had a passing familiarity with who the SEALs were, but I was certainly not prepared for what was about to happen. And we met my teammate's friend, his name was Jeff, at his apartment, which wasn't far from the Navy SEAL base. And needless to say, this guy Jeff was a character. He had a huge Harley parked out in front. He had tattoos covering his entire right arm. His apartment was just littered with stuff from all around the world. He had swords and skulls and spears. There were photos of Jeff and his platoon operating in the most remote places, from the jungle to the desert and everywhere in between. And as we sat down on this guy's couch, I almost had a heart attack. I looked over the side of the couch, and there was a huge glass cage with a 16-foot yellow Burmese python. And by the time I gathered myself, I looked up. I saw this guy, Jeff, dropping a live rat into the cage, to which he said, "It's lunchtime. Tiny hasn't eaten in a week." And I was like, who is this guy? So it wasn't long before Tiny finished his business with the rat, and we all casually somehow sat down on the couch together, and Jeff starts talking shop and reaches behind his couch, and I hear this Velcro, and he pulls out a pistol that was Velcroed to the back of his couch. And he proceeds to break down this weapon into all of its component parts. Takes him about 8 seconds, and then he puts it back together even faster. He then reaches under his couch and pulls out an M16 and goes through the same drill. You know, I felt like I was transported to a world that was so foreign to me yet so appealing. I was blown away. And it was that day that a seed had been planted in my head, one that would not soon go away. And from that day on, I was hooked. I was seeking out any bit of information about the SEALs that I could get my hands on. Books, magazines, movies, you name it. I was your standard Navy SEAL wannabe. I was completely enthralled with the idea of the SEALs, but completely embarrassed to admit it to anyone because I was a tall, unathletic, skinny, 20-year-old Ivy League college guy studying economics with zero military background, and who was I to talk about the Navy SEALs? But that did not stop me from my imagination running wild. Well, a few years passed by, and I graduated from college, and I started a job on Wall Street working for Goldman Sachs, a job that most college graduates would give their left arm for. And I happened to hit the industry just the right time. I ended up working for 18 months in a row without one day off. And it was insane. The pace and the demands of the job were incredible. Unfortunately, with this, I had gotten out of shape, overweight, completely unhealthy, and it was really even hard to live with myself. And I finally got a day off after 18 months, and my Goldman buddy said, hey, you got to come with us skiing. You know, you're finally getting your day off. Well, as a basketball player, I never really had a chance to ski because I was always in season, so I knew this was not going to be pretty. And lo and behold, on my second run down the slope, I landed hard on my shoulder. I blew it out. I needed immediate surgery. So now I'm back in New York. I'm back working these 18 hours a day. My arm's in a sling. My shoulder's throbbing. I was getting in worse shape, gaining more weight, just generally miserable. And then there was that fateful night. I walked home from work. I happened to live a couple minutes from downtown, and I had an epiphany right on the corner of Wall Street and Liberty Street. It was about 2 in the morning, and something moved me to stop dead in my tracks and look up into the sky, and I saw the most brilliant blanket of stars I had ever seen in my life between the skyscrapers. And I was so inspired that I started talking to myself. You know, what am I doing with my life? Where is my life going? And I finally let my guard down enough to wonder out loud by myself, if I could be or do anything in the world, what would it be? And my answer was clear, though I had never up to this point even remotely considered this as an option. I wanted to become a Navy SEAL. I wanted to be like Jeff. I wanted to visit the most dangerous places on earth. I wanted to hunt for bad guys around the world. I wanted to know everything there was to know about weapons and tactics and war fighting. I wanted to be part of a team, a platoon, with others with similar motivations and skills and attitudes. I wanted to be the biggest, baddest warfighter in the world, and I wanted my own 16-foot Burmese python as a pet. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that if I could somehow pull off becoming a Navy SEAL from where I stood on that moment at Wall Street and Liberty Street, that I would be able to conquer anything in the world for the rest of my life. I would have the skills, the resourcefulness, the knowledge, the swagger, the experience, the confidence to do anything in the world. And how great would that be? That would be a life changer. And obviously there was a long road of preparation ahead to make this dream come true, but I had found my why. I wanted to be bad. And as I tell my 5-year-old son, by bad I mean good. But that was step number one. Find the reason why you want to prepare for greatness. I wanted to change my life. So now we get to the how. How do you prepare? You know, once the decision was made for me to become a SEAL, I had a crystal clear reason why I was doing this, and then the real preparation began. So I left Goldman Sachs and I started to prepare for SEAL training. And I broke my preparation into 3 categories. Number 1 was everyday prep. Number 2 was mental prep. And number 3 was unconventional prep. And I worked on these 3 things tirelessly. And here are a couple of examples for each one. So number 1, everyday prep. For my line of work, or what I was trying to accomplish, this was basically physical preparation, preparing my body for SEAL training. I had to rehab my shoulder and get physical therapy and ice and more physical therapy. I was on a mission. I found out what scores I needed to score on this physical screening test to even get selected, and I created a plan to accomplish that, which meant push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, swimming, running. I ate well, I slept well, I was all in. I was doing my best to become just a physical machine. This was what I call the blocking and tackling that has to get done just to even get in the game. Then number 2 is the mental preparation. Now this was a tough one given where I stood from, because I had to train my brain to believe that I had what it took to become a Navy SEAL. And as they say in the investment world, past performance is no indication of future performance, and I had to make sure that that theory proved out right. I had to let go of all those preconceived, self-limiting beliefs that had accumulated over the years. I had to overcome expectations of my parents and my friends and society and all these other naysayers, and this was a full-time job. And then lastly, unconventional preparation. These are the things that your average person does not do. I was going after a slot that was extremely hard to get. The Navy only awarded 2 of these positions nationwide to civilians like me who wanted to become SEAL officers. And I was competing against some of the biggest physical studs in the world who had been training to become SEALs since they were 10 years old. This process was a competitive sport, and I had to do something different. And here are a couple of examples of the lengths that I went to secure this coveted spot. You know, a big factor for selection was based on how well you scored on this physical fitness test. That was a big elephant. This was a combination of swimming, running, and calisthenics. So I watched and I studied dozens of the best candidates take this test, and I took notes on how they maximized their score. Well, the first event was a swim, and with a little investigation, I found out that the pool where we were supposed to do our swim was going to be closed during our testing period, and we were slated to go to a different pool. Well, that wasn't happening because the pool we were supposed to go to was much smaller than this new one, which played to my advantage because the smaller pool meant more flip turns, which meant more streamlining and more rest time for me. So I secretly paid the pool guy $500 to finish the repairs 2 weeks ahead of time so that we would swim in that smaller pool. And that saved me 45 seconds on my swim time, which I needed. And then there were pull-ups, not a very fun exercise for a tall guy like me. I happen to be 6'7". So the night before I had my test, it was well after midnight, I climbed a 20-foot fence at the testing site and proceeded to dig a 3-foot deep hole underneath the pull-up bar so that I wouldn't have to waste energy holding my feet off the ground when I did my pull-ups. I needed to conserve every ounce of energy that I could. I also had a friend from Maine FedEx me tree sap, that I rubbed secretly on my palms prior to getting up on the pull-up bar so my hands wouldn't slip off, because I knew that my hands would be wet from the swim, and I had seen candidates slip off the bar prematurely because of their wet hands. Well, that was not going to happen during my test, and I ended up knocking out 30 pull-ups. And then, of course, there was the run. I'm not a great runner, so I hired a guy called a rabbit who would run the 1.5-mile race at the exact pace that I needed to run in order to compete. And all I needed to do was to keep up with this guy, which thankfully I did. So there was no playbook here. I had to get creative and do things that these other guys wouldn't do and compete against some of the best SEAL candidates out there. And in the end, against all these odds, I was one of the 2 men chosen from around the country to begin my career as a SEAL officer. So that's how I prepared physically, mentally, and unconventionally. And then lastly, results. You know, how does it work? You know, and in the end, I made it through the 6 months of SEAL training without a lot of trouble. And this was not because I was the fastest or the best swimmer or the smartest, because I was certainly not any of those things. My guess is that I was the most prepared, physically, mentally. I had been through Hell Week so many times in my head. I felt like it was a walkthrough. You know, it did not register in my mind as this big, scary, intimidating watershed event because I had planned and imagined and role-played so many times. And people to this day ask me, you know, what was the hardest part of Hell Week? And honestly, I can't really think of one. I had such a strong why and I had prepared so well, the thought of quitting never even entered my mind. So in the end, I think we all know preparation pays off. I've done this dozens of times, dozens of examples of this going forward. I'm sure that you all have examples in your life where the preparation has really paid off. And now I'd like to turn the tables and talk about how some of these lessons may apply to your line of work. So as you may have guessed, the first order of business is to think long and hard about why you prepare the way you do, why you write loans, why you do paperwork, why you network, why you manage people, why you do what you do. Now, my dream was to become a Navy SEAL and change my life forever. What's your dream? What's your goal? What's your aspiration? Is it to help people? Is it to gain freedom, financial security? What's your goal? What's your aspiration? Is it to provide for your family? What's the thing that's going to drive you to prepare? Because preparation is tough, especially if it's not supported by a good reason and a strong purpose. And we could talk about this why. We've talked about this in other segments. But I'd like to get to the meat of the critical skill or the habit that every loan officer must do in order to be the best that they can be. And that's cold calling and prospecting. I'm sorry, I know it's not the most fun always and the most glamorous part of the job, but it needs to get done. And when I was a SEAL, going on 20-mile treks with my platoon with 80-pound ruck packs on our backs was not my idea of a great time either, but it has to get done. So how do we make the best of it? Well, when I left the SEAL teams, I went back to business school, and I ended back up at Goldman Sachs, this time not as an investment banker, but as a high net worth financial planner. And as a new guy, it was my job to cold call, to network, and to prospect with people with personal net worths north of $20 million. That's it. And I prepared for this cold calling assignment like I prepared for my missions as a Navy SEAL commander. I prepared like my life depended on it. I didn't know any other way. In the SEAL teams, your life does depend on how well you prepare, and I tried to apply this same level of care and attention to this professional work. So here's how I prepare to cold call and prospect. You probably heard some of these strategies before, but this is my perspective. I think we're going to try to get a cheat sheet out here so you can after the call, so you can remind yourselves of these. But basically, these are what I call the 6 S's, the steps for cold calling and prospecting success. Number 1, sources. You know, in SEAL speak, this is what we would call intel gathering. If I'm a sniper and I have to lay up for a week in the woods to get one shot at a bad guy, I want to know what the source of the intel is. Is it CIA? Is it human intelligence? Is it an informant? Is it satellite imagery? I want to know how valuable that target is. We say HVT, MVT, LVT. Is it a high value, medium value, low value target? Similarly, before you call a prospect, you need to first segment that list by source and gather as many details as you can. Where did the lead come from? Was it a web lead? Was it a referral? Was it a purchase list? Was it a business card follow-up? And then rank these leads by potential, high, medium, and low, so that you're expending an appropriate amount and level of resources and time on each of these prospects. Step number 2, systems. We all know that
Phil,
systems...
Oh, there it goes. There it goes. I wanted to make sure your screen was showing. Keep
Gotcha.
it rolling.
Yeah, we all know that systems build habits, and our pre-deployment SEAL training regimen is scheduled months ahead of time. We've got explosives and diving and free fall and land nav and small arms, and these modules are on the calendar. They rarely change, and we complete these tasks without question, delay. There's no hesitation, even for the less glamorous stuff. And as a mortgage professional, cold calling and prospecting is a mandatory block of training. It needs to be put on the calendar weeks, if not months ahead of time. Don't leave it till the night before. We all know that's a recipe for neglect. And my suggestion is to determine a starting time every weekday, along with a certain number of calls that you might make no matter what happens. Block the time. I'm not trying to insinuate that this is easy, because it's not, but it's just a necessary block of time that needs to get done. Number 3, the scorecard. I call it a scorecard. And just like Navy SEAL snipers make it a practice to grade every single shot they make in what's called their dope book, where they say what the humidity was and what the wind was and how far it was and whether it was a good shot, bad shot. I made it a practice to grade every one of my prospecting calls. I happen to use military jargon because it's just made it a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting for me. So, for instance, if I made a prospecting call and it was a wrong number, I called it an AD, which is an accidental discharge. This is not good. It's when your weapon goes off accidentally, so that's not a good thing. If I got no answer, I would check that off on my little spreadsheet as a miss. If I got voicemail, I would consider that an extremity shot, which is a leg, a lower leg, an arm, a forearm. It was okay, but not what you really wanted. If I got one of the gatekeepers, I would consider that a dead man. That's when you go to take a shot, but there's no bullet in the chamber, and that's badness, because that could have been the one that you needed. And if I actually got to talk to a prospect, I consider that a center mass hit. That was the money shot. That's the one that I'm trying to get. And if I actually scheduled a meeting with somebody, which is, of course, got to be pretty rare, but I call that a double tap. So I'm not suggesting that you adopt this type of scorecard. It may be a little much for a civilian, but I recommend coming up with something that works for you. The idea is that you create a scorecard that allows you to grade yourself on the outcome of these calls, holds you accountable, and it provides some great insight and some great data over time, and it allows to be a little bit more fun and make light of what can be a tough job. Now we move to number 4, script. You must have different scripts prepared for different people. In the SEAL teams, we call this contingency planning. What happens if we miss the rendezvous point? What if our radio breaks down? What if it rains? What if the target's not there? After all, SEALs go behind enemy lines with no one around to help. And as cold callers and prospectors, you must be prepared ahead of time for the top 10 most likely people to answer the phone. Is it the spouse, the kids, the actual person, the executive, a parent? Don't leave this up to chance. Have a contingency plan. The next one is silence. We, as SEALs, we are known for our stealth. You never knew we were coming, and you never even knew we were there. And in the same vein, make your calls from a quiet place, no distractions, no boiler room sounds humming in the background, no riffraff. Make sure you're 100% present, professional, listening, and patient. And then the last one is smile. It's hard to come up with an analogy for the SEAL teams when you're out hunting and being hunted. But as a cold caller, you should precede each call by conjuring up happy, smiling thoughts. Sounds kind of hokey, but keep photos of your kids and jokes and a funny movie line or something close at hand. People can see your smile through the phone. And we could go into detail on each one of these important steps, but for now I just wanted to give a little bit of a flavor for how I did my cold calling and prospecting, how it became part of Goldman Sachs lore. And I was semi-kidding about my comparison of the way that we prepare for Navy SEAL missions with how you might prepare or think about preparing for cold calling. And when I say semi-kidding, I really mean it. There is a large part of me that does believe that there are similarities. And there may be some people out there who say, well, of course you super prepared for your missions as a Navy SEAL. You know, your life and the life of your men depended on it. And to those people I say, yes, you're right. My life did depend on it on a daily basis when I was a SEAL guy. But I'm here to suggest that even if you're not a SEAL, that you prepare for your job, whether it's cold calling, prospecting, documenting, like your life depends on it, because it does. How you live your life, the money you make, the freedoms you enjoy, the security that you build impacts your life in a significant way every day. Your preparation may not be the difference between life and death, but it's not far behind. Thank you very much.
Phil, that was awesome, man. You really delivered awesomeness in a tight, I think it was 17-minute window. So I think you're ready for a TED presentation, my friend.
Thanks.
Hey, David, since you hope you were able to stay on, I have a few thoughts that I want to share and translate to everybody. But from your perspective, yeah, David, from your perspective, do you have any questions or any thoughts to share?
From listening to Phil, or just last thoughts on my own? First of all, Phil, loved listening to you. I really appreciate the 6 steps on preparation. I took a bunch of notes, and I just thought that was fantastic. So, Dave, I commend you. I think you're really giving a lot of value on these coaching calls to those people that are in your community.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, and David, I will give you a couple last thoughts as we wrap up the call. We do have 8 more minutes. So let me just connect a few thoughts that I took from Phil Black. The whole why, and everybody on this call, you know how passionate I am around, it starts with why and it ends with accountability in terms of, creating personal change, in terms of really living in our true potential. So Phil, thanks for all the value you went, and I just leave everybody on this call. Is your why clear and personal enough to achieve your goals? You can say, yes, I got a great why, I got a clear why, but, and if you're, financially where you want to be and all the areas of your life are where they want to be, well, then high fives and go mentor and teach others. And if they're not, you got to grow that why. That was a thought I had. Are you prepared and are you preparing? I know, not only did I take some notes while you were talking, but, I think mortgage coach, in the way that we're doing things, we can be more prepared. I can be more prepared. I'm gonna take some personal action on that, and I hope every mortgage coach on this call, really take your preparation to another level. I do want to tie it back to a mortgage coach. When it comes to delivering every home buyer a mortgage experience, it takes a couple minutes, and I can't think of how many times I've talked to a mortgage coach who is, they're only providing the mortgage coach experience to the rate shopper, to the grinder, or to the high-income affluent person that was referred by their financial planner, but they're not giving that to everybody. And I ask them why not, and they're just saying, I don't have enough time. And I'm just like, come on, guys. You can be more prepared and you can do better. Give everybody an awesome experience. And so I like this quote, are you, prepare like your life depends on it. It was awesome, Phil. Really love these 6 S's and how you brought your, Navy SEAL mortgage coach. So I am going to try to create some type of mortgage coach deliverable, and we'll have a follow-up on this next week. Phil, anything you want to add to that?
No, I really appreciated Dave's as well, presentation as well. I've been a huge fan, read a lot of his books, and was happy and honored to be on the same line items, the same subject line with him.
Wow, thanks. Well, I appreciate that.
Right on. Well, we've got about 5 more minutes, guys, so you're both going to get some closing thoughts. I want to wrap things up so we can focus on both of your closing thoughts. Do want to remind everybody who's a mortgage coach, sales mastery is part of our culture. I mean, Mortgage Coach was, launched 16 years ago on the stage of Sales Mastery when I was a top loan officer, and my backstory in the invention of Mortgage Coach became more than just a pet project, but it became an industry movement. So Phil Black is going to be speaker this year. If you have not already purchased your tickets for Sales Mastery, we sent out an email last week. Make sure you sign up and make sure you get your Mortgage Coach discount of $695. If there are any managers or leaders that want to get any type of corporate relationships or want to plan some events with me or anybody on my training team while you're there, just reach out to me, Dave at Mortgage Coach, and we'll either take care of any corporate relationships or making sure that we make your experience at Sales Mastery something awesome. And Phil, thanks for getting things together with Todd Duncan and Matt so that you're going to be providing leadership at the event. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Right on. So reminders, everybody, if you're new to our community, every Tuesday we do these coaching calls where their ideas, their strategy, their inspiration. On Thursdays, it's getting into the weeds. It's getting into how to use our technology to drive Mortgage Coach experiences. And every Fridays there's beginners. So want to just remind everybody who's on that call about this. Also, this call is being recorded, so you can get that in our YouTube page. So folks, we got about 3 more minutes. David, let's start with you. First, you may have some things that you've thought about that you just want to share from the heart, or it may be something that came up from Phil. But I'll give you a couple minutes to share some closing thoughts. Then Phil, you'll get a minute or two, and then we'll wrap it up.
You bet. Well, I actually did have a thought, and Phil, it's a result of you starting with it, which is your why. It's interesting because the seminar I'm the most well known for is called The Automatic Millionaire, and I always say that there's 5 key questions that will determine if you'll be rich. And the first question is, why do you want to be rich? And my book, Smart Women Finish Rich and Smart Couples Finish Rich, they start with looking at your values first. And it's really important when people go, I don't know what my why is. I don't know what my why is. People come up to me and they go, David, how do you figure out your why? I'm like, it's not complicated. Talk to me about your values. What's really important to you? Tell me what matters most to you. And people go, my family matters most to me. God matters to me. Making a difference in my community. Sit down and take a look at your values. And that can be as simple as taking out a piece of paper and write down all the values that you can think of that are important to you in life, and then get it down to 5. And look at those 5 values, and that's where you focus on the why. And I'm a big believer that the financial plan that you create needs to be based off of that why. So I think all financial planning, the problem with most financial plans is it's just numbers. It operates in a vacuum. People don't relate to it. But when you're clear on what your why is, you become unstoppable. So I'll hand that back to you, Phil, because you did such a great job of bringing attention to that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've always been fascinated by people's why and the epiphanies that people have and why they, going back to my presentation, why they prepare as much as they do. And I'm also fascinated by stories of preparation by the people, the world-class performers, the Jerry Rices of the world, the Peyton Mannings of the world, the Michael Jordans of the world. And I've had huge eye-opening awareness when I look and study and look at what these guys, in particular these sports figures, do to get where they are. It does not happen for no reason. And sometimes you look at them and then you say, oh, they're gifted, they're physically gifted, or they had some other circumstance in their life that got them to where they are. They have unbelievable preparation stories going way beyond the limits and what I call unconventional preparation. And that's why I'm so excited about and so passionate about hearing what people do to get where, hearing people's personal stories about how they got to where they are. And going back to Dave, they usually have a kernel of the why that's pretty strong.
Well, gentlemen, this call has been fantastic. I really want to close the call on those thoughts. Want to urge everybody in the Mortgage Coach community connect with each other, support each other. Let's make this a focus on growing your own why, and for all you managers on the call, getting your team executing around their why. The fact that you're here, you share something in common, but let's get a little deeper, let's get a little bit more personal. To both Phil and David, thank you so much for the leadership you brought to the call, the time you spent to prepare. And David, I look forward to hopefully having you as a regular guest in the Mortgage Coach community.
Thank you.
And Phil Black, can't wait to see you in person. Hopefully we'll have dinner together in Palm Springs in a few months, and hopefully we'll have you back in the coaching call.
Sounds great.
All right, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah, let us know what you thought as you leave. I'll put up a posting question. Give us your thoughts on today's call. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.